This was freshman year of high school.
Yep.
Yeah, I had like 8 of my classmates were pregnant. And,
Jesus Christ!
And throughout the class, all we were doing was feeling the baby kick, right? Right, like that was so shocking to me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Professor Govala, and today I'm going to be talking to a really good friend of mine, actually my brother-in-law, Dr. Miracle Isioma Amayo. And we've known each other for several years now, and today I just want to kind of talk to him about his background, his degrees and accolades, and how it relates to the YouTube channel, specifically engineering or electrical and computer engineering. So just to introduce him again, his name is Dr. Miracle Isioma Amayo, and he has a medical degree with a specialization in psychiatry. And currently he is a 1st Armored Division psychiatrist for the U.S. military. So before we dive into anything specific about engineering and how it relates to psychiatry, we want to first talk about his early life and immigration journeys. And it's my understanding that you were born in Nigeria and you moved to the U.S. doing like high school, middle school. And I guess my question is, what was your transition like and how did it shape your outlook on education and opportunities?
Yeah, thanks, Demar. Thanks for having me. Yes, so I came from Nigeria when I was, I think about 13 years old. So moved from, inner city Lagos State to Kansas City, right? That was a huge shock, right? Like I was 13 years old, and once I got to Kansas City, I went into inner city Kansas City high school. That was a big shock. However, so imagine coming from Nigeria and going to Kansas City, huge shock. The biggest shock I had, cultural shock, societal shock difference, was moving from Kansas City, inner city Kansas City school to the suburb of Kansas City. The range from Nigeria school to Kansas City school, let's say that range is 10. Since you are engineers, you guys like numbers. That difference is 10, right? Yeah. So, but from inner city Kansas City to Lee Summit, that was the name of the suburban place, to Lee Summit, Kansas City, that range was like 20. So when it comes to like the difference in education, right? Yeah. And so that was the biggest shock for me, just how different it is from just, it was literally like a 20 miles difference in school, right? Like the schools in Lee Summit was just significantly, I mean, like in Kansas City, man, in inner city school, it was Center High School. I mean, this was back in the day. This was back in, I think this was 2008. So hopefully things have changed now. But back in 2008, man, there was barely enough teachers to class. Like my first class, remember, I just came from Nigeria. My first class, this was 9th grade. This was freshman year of high school.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had like 8 of my classmates were pregnant. And,
Jesus Christ!
And throughout the class, all we were doing was feeling the baby kick, right? Right, like that was so shocking to me. Right, like you gotta remember, like I come from Nigeria, and in Nigeria, like that's a no, right? Like that's not.
Yeah. So
that was the biggest cultural difference, and that was the first time that I really, because in both instances, in inner city Kansas City and Lee Summit, the school is free. The school is paid for by the funds. However, it's night and day. It's night and day. Like the Lee Summit schools were I mean, every kid had like an iPad. I mean, this was back in 2008. Yeah. Every kid had access to a computer. The busing system was a lot different. The resources was a lot different. the ratio of students to teacher was a lot different. The education of the teachers, like most of my teachers, at least some had like PhDs or master's degrees, and so, anyways, that was the biggest thing, and I think me finishing from Lee Summit is one of the helping factors that helped like launched me into my career.
100%. I think that I definitely can relate to that because when we moved to the States too, so from Cameroon, we went into inner city as well in Chicago. Well, not necessarily like any bad parts of Chicago, but I definitely felt or could see the changes between inner city. I came here from K-12 to 12th grade, so that's I believe that's just middle or elementary school is what they called it.
Yeah.
So from inner city to the suburbs, one is Mount Prospect High School, and those night and day, like you're saying, right? Like it was a lot more opportunities. Everything was cleaner in terms of the education system. So I could definitely understand how that was a foundation that launched a career, because it was certainly one for me as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even the football fields, like the condition of the football field in center versus Lee Summit, so much different. But I think that was a big part, and just showed how unfair America was, in the sense, not to like make it a racial thing or like a social thing, but it was just like coming from Nigeria, I had all these dreams of what America was. I had all these fantasies of what America was. I had fantasies that I would never be hungry again, and I will always have these opportunities. But it's not like that. It's which America do you get? You have to be in the right America for you to realize those American dreams. And I just thought that was the first lesson I learned as a youngster. But yeah, man.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that, because that leads into my next question, which is like coming to the US during such a formative period. What challenges did you face academically and culturally, right? There's different cultures from Nigeria to the US, and how did you push through them?
I mean, the biggest thing was cultural difference. I mean, academically, man, your boy, that was easy. that was the easy part. I mean, and especially like in the United States, you have all these things to support you, right? Like you had library, you had internet. What? Come on now, you didn't have that in Nigeria. In Nigeria, you didn't even have the books, right? Wow. Like everything you learned was from class. If you missed class, you missed it. Like I actually went to like a pretty good school in Nigeria, right? Like my parents were, middle class in Nigeria, working on our way to upper middle class. And I went to like a very good school, Command Secondary School in Nigeria. And it was one of the top rated schools in Nigeria. But like there was no library. The concept of having a library in the school, that was a new thing to me. Again, this was back in the day. Hopefully things have changed. And so coming to the States, you had library, you had office hours. I mean, if you needed it, right? Like you could go check out the books, right? Yeah. Back in Nigeria, you had to buy the book.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. So like it's just little differences. But so like education was so much easier. If anything, I had less pressure to do it in education, because there was just so much support and like coming, because of it was hard to translate, Nigeria education system to America education system. Mm-hmm. It's like apples to oranges. It's not easy to compare. So like when I started like freshman year, the coursework was just so easy. It was simple for me. But the biggest thing was the cultural difference, right? Like I said, the values, the Nigerian values versus the American values, the expectation when you're in inner city Kansas City, and the expectation when you are in Lee Summit, Kansas City, right? You know, making friends, you know, how the friends relate with each other, right? How the friends relate with like my parents, right? Like, so I was in football. I joined football, and you know, football is a all year round thing for the most part, right? Like there's summer camp, and there's all these things, and there's like all these events that you have to go to, and people and my friend's mom were very involved. Like the moms would make like, you know, team dinners and things like that. And there will be like sleepover at friend's house. Hell fucking no, we didn't do that. And then like I couldn't, like my parents, where are you? Where are you going? What these people? Who's right? Like all those things, right? And then also again, obviously going to Lee Summits, all my classmates were much like my dad was doing 2 jobs, right? So all my classmates were much like financially better, in a better place than us. And so it was just like looking at what other people have that I didn't have, right? And just like navigating that and navigating those feelings of like being less and those feelings of being different. So that was the biggest challenge. You just like finding your center, your core in a place where you're different. And at least in inner city, Kansas City, everyone looked like me. Or most people look like me, right? It was high population African Americans, right? Even though I mean I still have my accent. I don't know why I still have my accent, but like it was a lot thicker back then, right? So even though you after I say a few sentences, you would know I'm not from around here, but at least I still like could easily blend in. Back then in Lee Summit, I was one of 5 Black people in there at Lee Summit, right? And this was a school of like 2,000 students. So it was a big school, right? So like just very clearly, I was the odd man out, and so just learning how to like use that to my advantage, to not feel less because I'm different, but to feel more, and using that as a chip. So that was just the biggest challenge. I mean, like, you know, I was like 15 when I went to Lee Summit, 15, 14, right? Like just, you know, trying to form yourself and form your identity and figure out exactly where you fit in this world, especially coming from like a whole different world. So that was the biggest challenge, and I think I did the best that I could here.
Yeah, I think that the cultural was also very apparent for me too, because like you said, normally when you go through sports, I was an athlete as well, played football and I wrestled, and a lot of my colleagues' parents would always come to the games, like the football games or like the wrestling matches, you know, the track meets. I think in the span of 4 years, I think my parents came to like 1 or 2 games, and again, no fault of their own. It's just more of a situation where, like you said, you know, they're working, they're trying to make sure you have everything you need that, you know, in the house, right? You like things that you actually need in the house. And I think that it's also cool that you talked about uniqueness, using uniqueness to your advantage, right? I think that people can sometimes look at yourself as like, oh, I'm the odd man out, and then use that as a, not necessarily as an excuse, but like as a reason to say, oh, I'm not being treated fairly because I'm the odd man out. Instead of saying, okay, I'm the odd man out, let me see what I can do that other people can't to stand out even more, right? So to bring attention to myself even more. And I did that a lot throughout my high school career, my college career as well. So what I was going to say was that, would you say that these challenges help shape where you are right now? And like, for example, when did medicine first become like something you were seriously considering? Was it around this moment, or was it like when you got into, I guess, college, or you were applying to colleges, or was medicine something you thought about in high school, or was it a defining moment, or did it evolve over time?
Yeah, that's a good question. But one thing I wanted to say. So with sports, right? Like back home, there was no sports with school. right? Like sport was not. I don't know how it was in Cameroon, but you know, my parents didn't understand the idea of extracurricular activities. So no, my parents never even came to any game. I played 3 sports. I did track, I did wrestling, and I did football. And for all 4 years, my parents never came to any game. And yeah, no, I don't blame them. It's just different. And I think that's a big key, understanding that you're from different worlds and learning how to bridge those worlds, right? Learning how to bridge those words and definitely not using the eyes of one world to judge the actions of the other world, right? Like, and so I think that was a big key. But yeah, to your question, medicine. So growing up in Nigeria, my mother was a nurse, and my mother ran like a clinic in our living room in Wasilatu, Lagos. Wasilatu is the name of my Surulere, Lagos. So we were living in a 2-bedroom apartment. There were 9 of us in the house, and my mom would see patients in the living room. And this, this was when I was about 5 to 8 years old. And I was the second child. My older brother was too old or was not interested, and my baby brother was too young. And so I became like my mother's assistant, right? Like I'll be the one to buy the medications, the injections, the drugs. I'll be the one to like help set up the patient. Sometimes I even help her draw, right? Like I became like a nurse to my mom, while my mom was like the doctor. Anytime there's like a new pathology or like a new sickness that my mom was not familiar with. So back in Nigeria, the most common thing back there was malaria, right? So most people that came to my mom were typically suffering from malaria or from something like that. Well, now and then there's a new thing that comes up that my mom is not familiar. She had the books in the back. I'll be the one to go look and do the research. And then when there's no patient, it was just books. Again, these little things that we take for granted here, you didn't have access to books, right? There was no public library. So the books you had was the book you bought. And so the only books in the house, and I always loved reading, right? I always loved reading. So the books in the house were like my mom's medical books. And I would read those things from cover to cover. I can remember reading about microbiology and how the event started of we learning, because back in the day, we didn't know bacteria and microorganisms existed. We always thought it was like evil spirit or demon. And I think if I remember correctly, I mean, even in Nigeria, but this was in the whole world, worldwide. In the whole world. Oh, wow. In the world, why? Like, because back when there was the Black Plague, we didn't know the Black Plague was caused by microorganisms. We didn't know it was caused by microorganisms that were carried by rats. And and that's why it spreaded so fast. We didn't understand the idea of quarantine and things like that, right? Until I'm pretty sure it's Robert Koch. And Robert Koch had a microscope, and he took his spit and he looked at his spit in the microscope and then saw all these things moving around. And that's how we found out about microbes. But that was something I read in my mother's book about the origin of microbiology. And then we ended up getting penicillin, and penicillin saved a lot of people in the world. Anyways, so that's how medicine started for me, back in my mom's house. And obviously, because I spent so much time with my mother, I got an affinity to do what she does. So I've always known I wanted to be a doctor. I've always known I wanted to be a doctor, even from a younger age.
What I want to do now is kind of move into your medical training and your career path. You said you attended medical school at UMKC. What drew you to that program, and what should aspiring medical students know when choosing like a certain school? In terms of like what the application process looks like, maybe the GPA requirements that you had to obtain in high school, any out of school clubs maybe that helped you get into UMKC. And I also understand, this is a loaded question here, but I also understand that UMKC's medical school has a 6-year med school program where you do I think 2 years of undergrad and 4 years of med school. So maybe kind of talk about that for aspiring medical students trying to go down that route.
Yeah. So what drew me to UMKC? I kind of stumbled into UMKC. So typical, I didn't do the 6-year program. So I did the UMKC 6-year program, and it's a program where you go from high school to MD, right? So you don't have to take the MCAT because you skip that step. So typically medical school is you do 4 years of college, you take the MCAT, and then you do 4 years of medical school. The 6-year program, I think last I checked, but this was a couple years ago, there was only 2 of its kind. There was one in Ohio, and then there's one in UMKC. UMKC is still doing it. And it's, you do your ACT or your SAT, you get in, you do 2 years of like undergrad. They just like shove all your undergrad requirements in 2 years, including summers. And then you do 4 years of like a traditional like medical college, a medical education, and then you come out with a BA and the MD.
Nice.
So, this was me, high school. I was in Lee Summit. Everyone was talking about college. Everyone was doing the college thing. And I wanted to go to college. I knew I wanted to be a doctor, but, I didn't know about the 6-year program. I just wanted to do my 4 years and then do another 4 years of medical school. I was intelligent. Like my GPA was like 4+. I can't remember what it was. I mean, it was in high school, but it was ridiculous. It was like 4.6 or some crazy stuff like that, right? And right, like I always knew I was a smart kid and things were easy for me. And so when it came to applying for college, I started looking at all this cost of colleges, right? Like I applied to all the big ones, Harvard, not Yale, but like all the, again, I was like 16, 17. I don't know. I applied to all the big names, Duke, Rice, all of it. And I got into most of them until the bill came. And then it's like, who is paying for these things? I mean, so the prices were so ridiculous that even after my scholarships, I had some scholarships, after the financial aid, and after the loan, in some cases, my dad would still have to pay like $50,000 a year, or my parents. Someone would have to pay $50,000 a year, right? Like so, I maxed out the FAFSA, I maxed out all those things, and then it became very clear to me. So I started the college process in like September of senior year, right? Like we did all the ACTs and did all those stuff. Started applying early applicants and all those things. And after, some rejections, some acceptance, financial aid, school visits, all of those, at the end of the day, by April, it was starting to set on me that I can't afford any of these colleges, right? And so April comes, like literally school starts next semester. I was scrambling to find a place to go, and UMKC, because UMKC, remember I lived in Missouri, UMKC was the local college. And so I applied last minute into UMKC and I got it, but not to their medical school, obviously. I got into their undergrad. So I just applied for like a biology undergrad, and then I got into UMKC. And then when I got into UMKC, because I was a late applicant, because of everything was late, they put me in a room so typically UMKC, they'll put you in a room with someone that is like similar major to you, or at least similar program to you as your roommates in the dorm. But because I was a late applicant, there was no more space for me. So they put me in a room with someone that was in their 6-year medical program.
Oh,
as a matter of fact, the floor that I was in was all 6-year medical program folks, right?
Wow.
And that's how I learned about the program and learned about the process to apply. And so I did 1 year of regular undergrad, then applied to the 6-year program, and then I got it. So that's how I got it. And so for people that want to get in, I think for the UMKC program, the biggest thing is being a resident of Missouri. If I was to say the most factor for that. So being a resident of Missouri, like the tuition is highly subsidized. Again, my parents were not rich, so finances was a very driving factor for everything I did. So like this was back in the day. Obviously, prices have changed now with everything. But like being from Missouri, my tuition was 20 grand a year.
Wow, that's not bad.
If you're from a neighboring state outside Missouri, your tuition will be 30 grand.
Wow.
So obviously I met your sister in this medical school, and your sister is from Chicago. So while I was paying 20 grand a year, she was paying 30 grand a year. So, and that's because Chicago is one of the neighboring states. So, but if you're from the Midwest, if you're away from the Midwest, if you're from like California, Florida, New York, the tuition was 50 grand.
Wow.
Right. So this is all relative ratio. And that was back in the day. I don't know what it costs right now. So it was a big deal being from Missouri. As a matter of fact, people that knew of this program, when their kids were in junior year or high school, they would move to Missouri.
Wow.
So that they can claim Missouri so that their kids can apply and go to, like, it's a serious thing. Like I have friends now that after they finish their whole thing, they're gonna settle down in Missouri so that they can have their kids going through this program. Right.
Wow.
It helps to know people and to have, like, families that's way ahead. So I mean, if you want to believe in God or luck or whatever, like I literally stumbled into these things. And I remember just being so devastated my senior year, man. Like seeing all these colleges, all this dream of mine just like blow away because of lack of finances. But that's how I got it. So being in Missouri is a big factor. Also being in Missouri, you are highly selected for. Being like a resident of Missouri, you're highly selected for. And so I didn't have to be as competitive as other folks. But I still was competitive. Like I said, I had like a ridiculous GPA. But I wasn't doing, like a lot of these other folks that have always wanted to be in medicine, they've done like the missionary thing where they go to like, they go to Guatemala and they do like a medical thing. I didn't have any of that. Like, ain't nobody paying for me to go to Guatemala. Or they've been shadowing their uncle that's a doctor for like 20 years now. Or they've done like an MA practice. I didn't have any of that, but I did have a little bit of medical stuff, right? Like I talked a lot about like working, in Nigeria with my mom and all those medical practice. I talked about shadowing a few other people, right? And also again, having that 1 year to prepare, like, being with my roommates, learning from my roommates what it was. I used that 1 year to like beef up my, my resume and my medical stuff. And that helped. So yeah, I mean, it's just like all things. Like these days, man, I don't even know if I will survive these days. These days, man, kids are so competitive just to get into high school. It's like you see a high school kid and he has won 2 Nobel Prize before he gets to high school. Golly, they have like 7 research papers. It's wild out here, man. Yeah. But yeah, that was how I did it. I think for that school, mainly it's being a resident of Missouri.
Yeah, no. So I think that it's very interesting because a huge part of medical school is taking the MCAT. And if you talked about how you don't have to take the MCAT for UMKC 6 years program, how do they test that skill, right? Because again, I understand that like the education system here is heavily based on standardized testing, which I don't necessarily agree with because, I wasn't really a big standardized tester. And I feel like it's cram work, right? It's just based on how well someone can cram something in a small amount of time or given amount of time. It doesn't really test your abilities to really do something on a large scale. So how did they test your abilities given that you guys are not required to take the MCAT?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So obviously I'm not I'm not in like the board of administrators and know their secret behind the scene. But my understanding of all this, of our education system and why it's so difficult. So like the MCATs, um, I think the idea is to test your resiliency. And even in medical school, back in my day, we have 3 steps to get our medical certification. Step 1, step 2, step 3. And they've changed it now, but back in the day, step 1, oh my God, step 1 is like the MCAT on steroids, right? This is a 9-hour exam. It's a 9-hour exam on just pure basic science, including biochemistry, cell biology, and I think is there some organic chemistry in there? No, but just basic science and then like basic medical science, right? Like you're learning about like genetics. Like there's a lot of genetics in there too. You're learning about like random one in 10 million occurrence genetic diseases, right? But the idea is to test your ability to receive a lot of information, process it, and retain it. Your resiliency to fight through a lot of archaic information and understanding. And I think that's the point of the MCATs. So how do they do it in the 6-year med? In the 6-year med, they do it with their undergrad schedule. So now you're compiling 4 years of information into 2 years, right? Because I did all the prerequisite. Like my first year, I was taking like 25 credit hours. Wow. And remember, I had already done 1 year of undergrad, right? Okay. I did 1 year of undergrad. So this was, my road was a little easier than the folks that were really just pretty fresh off high school, right? Yeah. Like you were in like 7 classes, including summers. And so those 2 years, there was a lot of weeding process. Like I lost a lot of classmates during those 2 years. Right. And I think that's how they test and they win out, because the MCAT is nothing but a win out process. It's just a way to cut out the fat from the fold. And so those 2 years acted the same. And again, like, dude, I was like 18, 19, right? Like I had people partying, right? Like I was in college, man. And people were out there like getting drunk and I had test on test on test on test. And so, I think that's how they do their selective process. Yeah.
So you talked about how you did a year already of undergrad. Mm-hmm. So did you do 2 additional years, or did you just do 1 more year?
2 additional years. I did 2 additional years. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So instead of me to finish the program, so most people, instead of me to finish my entire college in 6 years, like other people that are in the program, I did mine in 7.
In 7. I got you. Yeah, that was, I mean, that makes sense. Yeah. Again, 2 years to do a whole 4-year undergrad. Yeah, I can't even fathom how crazy that might have been. And with all the temptations, right? Like you said, in college.
Temptations, bro.
Yeah, and I think that's the most respectable thing about people who make it out of college. Essentially, with people like to say things about different degrees, but I think that all degrees, really, just to be fair here, is you need to really stay out of trouble. Right. Like no partying, or minimal partying, minimal, like doing things that are outside of your major, and really focus, because that's going to shape, excuse me, that's going to shape the rest of your life. Right. So with that being said, what was medical school actually like compared to expectations? Right. What surprised you the most? Because when, like, for example, if I can imagine what med school would be like, it's like what you're saying. It's like grinding the midnight oil, right? If you had like a condensate lamp, you're grinding, and then you sleep for like 2 hours. You're back in class. You have to be engaging. The professors are very strict. I'm just imagining this, but what was it like compared to your expectations of it?
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Again, I think maybe that was one of the helpful things. I didn't have much expectation. Again, I was young, very young, right? Like I think I was either 19 or 20 when I got into the 6-year medical program, right? I had been in the States for 6 years now, right? I had all these ideas of who I want to become, but I had no idea of how to get there. So I really didn't come in having much expectation, but you're exactly right. That was what my entire 6 years was. It's just grind after grind after grind after grind, right? It was just, I think there was a point where I had a big test every 2 weeks, and if you didn't do well in one test, you're not gonna make it to the next test. It was it was just that kind of anxiety, and it was just like, it was one of those classes where you come into the class, you look left, you look right, and they're like, one of the person in your left or right is not going to be here by the end of the semester type deal. And it was just like that. But again, man, I cannot, things by the grace of God, man, things was just a little easier for me, right? Like I actually found out that I did better when I didn't go to class. And then I had this job, again, finances, right? So I was working a job while I was in medical school. I was working, it was like I was working for the DOM system. It's not an RA, it's not like the residential assistant, but something close to that, where I manned the front decks, I did the mail, I did all those kind of, it was like, I don't know what they called it back then, but I would always take the night shift. And so, but in the night shift, you didn't have to do much. You just had to be at the decks. And during those night shifts, I did a lot of studying. That's when I did my studying. And so back then, it was all PowerPoints. So I would just do my classes at night and sleep in the daytime. And that was just kind of how I got to, and then just go and take the test and do the test. But no, it was a lot of grinding. I don't know if that's like typical for most med school. Again, because of, right, like we're just compiling a lot of things into 6 years, right? It was all packed. And then you have, and you have a lot of kids, right? Like, so these people most of the kids in this program are coming from high school, right? They graduate 2 years younger than most of, like, you needed the program to be strict enough and structured enough where, you produce capable doctors at the end of the day who have less maturity and less experience. And so it was just like grinding. You just had to find your flow. Even though the grind, like what worked for one person did not work for another, right? Like your sister was the type that would go to class, we record the class, we replay the recording in the class and things like that. Well, I'm the type that I didn't even listen to what the lecturer was saying. I just used the PowerPoints and I just just kept on clicking on that PowerPoint to the point where, like, when I'm in the exam and I see the question, I will bring up that slide on my head and I'll read off the slide in my head to answer the question. It was just stuff like that. But that's cool.
Yeah, I think reading a microbiology book at the age of 8 probably helped with that. Yeah, that definitely helped. Yeah. And also for the viewers, for the listeners, man, I think that, med school is not for the weak. I think that it's really intense. So then we're getting the firsthand view right here. So thank you for that.
Well, and not to I don't want to scare people either, right? Like, obviously, you're not going to medical school thinking that it's going to be a cakewalk. Well, it's definitely doable, right? Like I said, I stumbled into this, right? Like I did not. Yeah. I mean, I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't know what it entailed. So it's definitely doable. You just need, find your wave, find your style, understand yourself, understand how you study. Right. Yeah. And I think that's one helpful thing that I figured out early. How do I best study? Right. Because I'm not and when you know who you are, don't get shamed into who you're not. Right. I'm not a class going guy. And I remember when I first started, I felt guilty about that. Right. Because like I'm paying $20,000. I mean, it was a lot for me. Right. And I'm taking out all these loans. And so again, for the school, it was $20,000, and it was heavily subsidized. I even couldn't afford that, and that's how I got into the military. And I'm sure we'll talk about that later. But I had to join the military to pay for medical school. But like I had all this guilt earlier that I'm not going to class and I need to go to class. But once I figured out who I am and found out myself, find what works for you and do it. But it's definitely do it if my dumbass can do it. But yeah, no, it's not meant to be easy. I mean, if it was easy, everybody would do it, right? Like only 1% of the population are doctors, so it's not, but it's definitely doable. Yeah.
Okay, so then let's move on. So I understand that you did a fellowship, right? So essentially, you did 4 years of med school, and then you did 4 years of residency, and then a fellowship afterwards, right? I guess what made you choose psychiatry? And what did this subspecialty training add to your skill set? Like the extra year after the 4 years of residency in psychiatry?
Yeah, I chose psychiatry because there's so many reasons why I chose psychiatry. It just always come natural to me, just like understanding humans, just understanding people, and like I could see the strengths that led to their behavior at this moment, right? Like I could see how, something that happened back in the day or a fears of theirs or an insecurity of theirs leads to this overcompensation of this that you're seeing right now. And just talking to somebody, I just felt like I could really understand. And so that's why I chose psychiatry, because just human behavior just seemed to come human behavior, and studying of it just was so fascinating to me. And I chose psychiatry for that reason. And then, however, I always loved medicine, right? Like medicine was my first love, right? Like when I was back home with my mom in Nigeria, it wasn't psychiatry we were doing, it was medicine, right? It was the diagnosis, fever, infectious disease, those kind of stuff. So I really actually struggled with either psychiatry or medicine. Yeah, it's psychiatry where it's just like a natural ease for me. Like it was just like my language. And then it's medicine, which has always been my first love. And so when it was time to pick a residency, I didn't want to just leave medicine. I mean, in psychiatry, you still do medicine, but it's not medicine as medicine is. So I didn't want to just leave medicine. But then also, again, I was really in love with psychiatry. And so my what's the word? The deal I made with myself was I would do this fellowship. This fellowship, consult and liaison psychiatry. It's basically psychiatry for medical folks, for folks that are in the medicine, right? It's it's like the intersection between medical illnesses and medical pathology with like psychopathology. So that's what this fellowship is for. So we do a lot with transplant patients. We do a lot with surgical patients. We do a lot with ICU patients. And so that's what the fellowship is. And so that's why I did the fellowship. It was a way for me to still retain my love for medicine while still doing my, psychiatry love.
Nice. That's interesting. Yeah. And so you mentioned earlier a little bit how joining the military allowed you to kind of cover the cost of, your journey, your med school journey. And I think that's what a lot of people are doing and should do, because I think it's a very important thing that we have. We kind of use this pursuit or join the military to kind of help us to aid in our education. So I guess from my question is, what motivated you to pursue psychiatry within the U.S. military? And how does military medicine differ from civilian practices, if you've done both?
Yeah, I've not done that much civilian practice besides what I learned throughout my training, right? Like throughout medical school training, and also I did some rotations during residency in some civilian institutions and things like that. So psychiatry was always psychiatry for me, right? Obviously it's not, besides that I love and it came easy to me. Also, right, cultural wise, we don't believe in that. I mean, you not believing in it doesn't make it not be a factor.
Not be there, yeah.
You know, in your culture, right? Like you clearly see this. There's a lot of stigma, but you clearly see the deficiencies, right? Like you see a lot of people with anxiety, right? You see a lot of people with like those severe pathology, like psychosis and things like that. But we just ignore it and call it something else. It doesn't make it go away. And so another reason I wanted to do psychiatry was to help bridge that gap within our culture and within our people, and even Black people, right? Like there's a lot of mishaps. That's the best way I can put it. A lot of mishaps and distrust of the medical system with a lot of people of color, right? And so, but again, that doesn't stop the illnesses from coming and the illnesses from happening. And so another reason I chose medicine, chose psychiatry is to help bridge that gap. Maybe I can help someone get help, by just looking like them and understanding where they're coming from and speaking the language in a way where they will be easier to understand for them. The military, I always wanted to do psychiatry. The military just helped me get there. And psychiatry in the military is actually a lot easier. The thing about psychiatry is very closely tied with resources and closely tied with resources and society, right? In the military, it's a good system where you have all your resources, right? Like you have your healthcare, you have money for food, you have a job, a consistent, stable job. And if you have all those things, your psychopathology is a lot easier to manage and a lot easier to handle, if that makes sense. So in a way, the level of cases I see within the military community is nowhere as hard as the type of cases you will see outside. But one big thing, again, that the military population is unique to is that trauma, is that combat trauma, right? And that's something that we wrote the book, we in the sense of military psychiatry, military and VA medical system, wrote the book on how to treat PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So that's something that is just heavily represented in the military population that you wouldn't see a lot of in the civilian population. But other than that, man, it's still the same thing, right? Like it's still people that you typically would see on the worst day of their life.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I was going to ask you about traditional psychiatry, right? So, for example, you watch different types of movies, like, for example, like Shutter Island, and it's kind of depicted in the sense that like psychiatrists will, not maltreat or like use their patients for like experimental purposes or like psych wards and things like that. What are your thoughts on that in terms of, is it just conspiracies, or did people really do things like that back then that were messed up? And how, because I think that's one of the things that's one of the reasons why people don't necessarily want to believe, or like you talked about how in the communities of people of color, we try and shy away from medicines like that, or medicines in this field. So how would you describe how things have changed from back then to today? And do you think that those psychiatrists back then were actually using their patients for just like experimental purposes?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question, and it is not wrong, right? A lot of medicine, not just psychiatry, but psychiatry kind of takes the cake on this. Where a lot of medicine has a dark past, right? Like a lot of the things we learned from today, right? It's from making a lot of mistakes from yesterday, right? Mm-hmm. Like you'd be amazed at how much of our medical knowledge came from Nazi Germany, how much of our medical knowledge came from maltreatment of slaves, back in the slaves era in American history, right? So a lot, and then even psychiatry, a lot of our psychiatric knowledge came from a lot of mistakes. And back then, and I think even a few years from now, we're going to look back at how we are practicing today and be like, wow, that was, cringe, right? Like we look back we look back at how they were practicing as early as in the 80s, the 1980s, and we're like, oh, well, like I don't want to be associated with that, right? So yeah, like I mean, there was a time when, and again, this is like we're talking about in the 50s, in the 60s, where we put all the people that were having psychopathology, all the people that were suffering from mental illness, and we just locked them up in rooms, right? And we didn't understand the activation, we didn't understand the behavior, and so we'll use things like insulin to put them in comas. We'll try just like cruel things that we did back in our history. But yeah, no, I mean, it's so the fear, I mean, obviously movies take it to a different level, but it's typically not too far from the truth of what happened back in the day. Today, definitely not. We don't do that anymore today. And so we don't do experiments on people now without their consent. And the experiment is never anything as drastic. Most of our studies would be, if this medication or if this intervention works, and it's always like, the intervention would not cause you harm. And so thank God, medicine is not tyrannical as it used to be anymore.
So yeah, I think that's a good thing that we're going towards the light in today's world. But just really quickly, how do you think that we still can fix this though? Like in terms of like kind of revert the damage that's been done, right? Because I used to live in Tucson and I've been to LA, and there's a lot of people out there who do have mental issues, but their one thing is still kind of like, and I know that you're saying that medicine is better now and psychiatry is better now, but how do we communicate that with the people who need the help and try and change their mindset to say, hey, listen, we're not doing these things anymore. The way we're doing it is based on your consent and like based on, how do we change the narrative, I guess? Do you have any opinions on that?
Yeah. I don't necessarily think like in those cases that you say in Tucson, right? Like the severely mental ill folks. I don't think the limitation is necessarily a fear of like being experimented on. I think for most of those cases, the limitation is just a lack of resources, right? To treat a severely mentally ill, right? Like we're talking about those suffering from schizophrenia or just really high, detrimental mental illness. Those are not cheap. And if you don't have the right resource, you don't have the right person, right? Like the state can only do so much. And sadly, the systems in the state or just purely government-based systems obviously not going to be as good as what you can get in like, say, like John Hopkins or even in the military, right? So I think that is most likely the limiting factor for those cases. But yes, there's still a lot of stigma and fear of the resources. I mean, there are organizations that always protest, our conferences every year. They go to our conference and they have like picket fences and all those things, and they protest psychiatry. It's just going to take time, right? Like to end the public opinion and to end, the trust of the public. It's just going to take time.
Yeah,
I think we have definitely. I mean, like in the last 10 years. We are definitely moving in the right direction. I mean, like everywhere we're talking about mental health, everywhere we're talking about seeking help, right? Like we're definitely moving in the right direction, right? Like people are not afraid of psychiatry. People are not afraid to talk about mental illness anymore. And so, yeah, we're definitely moving in the right direction, but to really, remove the stain from our name, that's just going to take years.
Yeah. I think so in terms of like people being more vocal about it, I think it's really a good thing, because I feel like mental illness in terms of like, depression, anxiety is something that doesn't really show, right? Like, for example, if you break your foot, everyone can see that you've broken your foot, right? But if you have anxiety, no one can really tell, right? And it's very easy to hide that. And I think that as a society or as a race, we're doing a good job of allowing people to be able to come forward and talk about, anxiety and PTSD and different things. Because again, right, I'm not sure the statistics, but I'm sure a lot of people pass away due to these illnesses, and it's good that as a society we're kind of coming together and bringing awareness to that. So
Yeah,
now,
definitely.
go ahead.
No, I was just, yeah, definitely. You're right. Like I said earlier, because you don't believe in something does not make it non-existent and
Yeah.
not a fact. But yeah.
Yeah. So what I want to do now is divert more towards engineering, technology, and like system thinking. And for example, my understanding is that psychiatry deals with complex systems of the brain, neurochemistry, behavior, things like that. And in engineering, in order for us to understand a system, we normally will, do some schematic drawings, maybe simulate it, and then create a design, like a design rule check. For example, if you're dealing with like a PCB or like a board, you might say, hey, we want the traces to be this width or this length or something like that before we actually create the board and we bring it into fruition, right? So in your field of work, both in, you're in the military. Do you guys use any specific technologies or tools or electronics that diagnose like the disease or the condition before you try it on a patient, or do you guys use any type of simulations, right? Or wearables or things that monitor different systems before you try it on your patients?
Yeah. That's a loaded question, and there's like so many parts to that question. So I will do my best to answer that. First, yes, right. Like the brain is just one big signal entity, right? We're talking ones and zeros. We're talking, electrical signal. All of those is just one huge action potential. That's what the brain is. The big difference between like a brain and like an engineering system, or like you said, like the motherboard and things like that. We didn't create this, right? We've had it for a while. We kind of know how it works. We know how some things work. A lot of things we do not understand. A lot of things. A lot of things is just so complex, right? Like if you can think about human behavior, you think about the power of our cognition. If you look around and see all the things that we've built, all of that is from our brain, and so it's such a complex organ with a lot of variables, and yet in a way it's the most simplest thing. And so that's one big difference between those two. As opposed to technology for diagnosing, we use MRIs, we use fMRIs to get a schematic of the brain, and we can use that to help with some diagnosis, especially for like neurocognitive disorders, so like things like dementia, some types of dementia, some types of all those complex cognition and neuro diseases. We can use MRIs to diagnose and things like that. And also for like medical illnesses that lead to psychiatric or neurological manifestations like lupus and things like that, we use technology for. But as to wearables is actually a part of medicine that is coming up and up now, right? Like with the advent of those Fitbits, the Aura rings, they're more, what is the word? They're more up-to-date systems now out there. We have a few things in the military where we can, track stress in soldiers, track sleep cycle in soldiers, track decision-making in soldiers. A lot of these are still like experimental, and we're collecting data to see how good it is. So wearables, we do have wearables, but nothing in the form that of sci-fi, where it's like we can detect depression or something like that. You're right, like the brain, and especially for like psychiatric illnesses, it deals a lot with the software of the brain, right? So like think of the hardware as like the brain structure itself, the tissue itself, the neurons, the firing. That's like the hardware. That's like engineering, right? It works exactly like it. It's zeros and ones signals in the brain. The software of the brain, that's what creates like the psychiatric illness, is how the whole forms the person, right? That's such a level of intricacy that, right? Like if you look at a computer, if you've never been to a computer before and you look at it and you look at your CPU and you see all the wirings, you cannot conceptualize that way, lead to like the internet or like what you interface with, right? You cannot. That's what we have to work on, right? So now we see the interface and we see the hard structure, and we know that the interface is not working, and we have to figure out what in the hard structure. And typically, you can't see anything wrong in the hard structure, especially for most psychiatric diseases. But yeah, so that's like it's a complex issue, if that makes sense. Yeah,
that makes sense. And there are no, I don't know if you mentioned this, but there are no like simulations that we've tried to adapt that can simulate the software of the human
mind.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, not to like get deep, but like, and the entire life is simulation, right? Like anytime you watch a movie, that's a simulation of like human behavior and human software in specific scenarios, right? Anytime you play a video game, that's kind of like a simulation of human life and human behavior and human reality. That makes sense. But in the sense of, I think when you say simulation, in the sense of like we build a computer programming and that programming acts like a human brain.
Yes. Yeah. Kind of like we kind of built this thing where, it functions or reacts similarly to how the human reacts, but this is based on data that we've collected over the years, right? So, for example,
AI? That sounds like AI.
So I'm going to dive into AI, but it's okay. Yeah, go ahead.
but obviously, AI is the cognitive part of our brain. Or AI will be a simulation of the cognitive part of our brain if the cognitive part of our brain had access to all the information that we had in the world, right? That's what AI is. But that's basically what you're saying. But a simulation that will simulate the emotional parts of our brain or the emotional reaction of our brain or behavior of our brain. If there is, I don't know one, because it's right. Like you and I would have the same scenario, the same life events, and we will react differently to the same stimulus, right? Like there's no two persons that's the same. And
but I guess what I'm trying to say is that this simulation, I understand you're saying there isn't one, but I guess in addition to that, I guess what I'm trying to clarify is that the idea would be to have a device that sticks to one type of like disease, like or condition, say anxiety, right? Just one type of condition. And then we interview a bunch of people, and then we see the similarities in, if all of them might say that, hey, whenever we get on a plane, we get anxiety. If 99% say that, then in that simulator, we implement, say that, okay, when this thing is triggered by something that says that it's in the air or going on an airplane, boom, we kick in the anxiety on it, right? And that device can help us to kind of create a way to say, okay, and then now we'll treat it, right? We'll say, okay, let's give it this type of medication, and let's see if the anxiety goes down. If that makes sense, but
that makes sense. But like the purpose of why you're creating this device, right? Like you're trying to create this device as a model for experimentation, so that we can try our drugs on this device instead of trying it on humans, right? So if you're going to do that, you would have to create the entire system. You basically have to create another human. By the time you create that, right? Because like our medications don't go into the brain or right, like our medications go into the human, so you would have to. You just need another human. So at that point, you're cloning somebody, and then obviously that comes with its own flush. But for our medications, like initially, when they're in the first phase of trials, we try them on like animals, on rats and other mammals, right? So that's kind of like the closest thing we have. And then the small, we detect the safer limits of it. Then we start doing like human trials. Typically, it's 1 or 2 people. But I mean, that would be a very complex device. And if we are able to, by the time, if we are technologically advanced enough to create a device like that, that can stimulate the human mind, and to the point where we will have similar reaction to like medications, right? To therapy. At that point, we're already creating our own human beings. Like we've created a race of robots. We just created more humans. Yeah. I mean, that's what childbirth is.
No, I think it's a very interesting topic, and I always want to dive into it because it's talking about like systems, and it's kind of relating engineering to the medical field, right? And which brings me to my next point is, over the years, maybe the last 5 years, we've seen a lot of these creators or these innovators talk about how AI, or again, I think they use that AI word loosely for my viewers, but we've seen them talk about how it's going to replace a lot of things, not just your regular grocery clerk, but also your engineers, and then your doctors, right? Doing things like complex surgery, and then also diagnosing things like PTSD, anxiety, depression. What are your thoughts on that, right? And they're saying that this is over the next decade. Just to kind of finalize this engineering part of the segment, what are your thoughts on AI taking over your field of work in the next decade?
I mean, it's definitely in the realm of possibilities, right? At the end of the day, my job is a cognitive job, in the sense of the reason I can do my job is because of my brain. It's because of my able to take in information, make sense of the information, and then spit out an output from the information, right? I got a lot of random information from everywhere, using my experience, using my cognitive ability, make a story out of it, make a sense out of it, make some reasoning out of it, and then based on those reasoning, come up with a solution for it. That's basically what AI does, except AI has more data points, has more ability, right? So it's definitely possible. But the big key of where AI might struggle is the ability to get that information, right? They needs, well, right now, for us to get that information, there's a human contact, right? There's a human element to psychopathology, right? You just saying I'm sad it doesn't give the depth of it, right? It's more of, what does the sadness make you do? How do you come about this sadness? Why are you just sad for a day because things are frustrating? Are you sad because you lost a loved one? Are you sad because you've always been sad, right? Like there's so much like human situation context around like the human condition itself. But I do think AI can definitely get all of those. At the end of the day, even those human situations, those human contexts, those human variables, at the end of the day, those are all data points. So no, I don't kid myself to be like AI can't do my job, can't take my job. It will be interesting to see. I definitely think it's within the realm of possibility.
Yeah, I think it's in the realm of possibility as well, but I don't think I see it in the foreseeable future, in terms of like decades or even 3 decades. Um,
I mean,
the,
these
the
things grow so fast though, right? Like, did
yeah,
you remember back in 2008, right? Like the phones were like the size of like water bottles, right? And now
yeah,
like the things we can do on our phones these days, right? Like,
yeah,
and this was just in the span of 10 years, right? Like the internet, remember dial-in internet, right?
yeah,
Like, right,
yeah,
and now the things you can do with the internet is there's just so many facets to it. I think technology is growing at an alarming rate, and every day there is new things, and it grows at like an exponential rate.
yeah.
I don't know. I definitely think it's definitely possible. Now the idea is, right, at the end of the day, it's a cost benefit.
Hmm.
How much does it take to create this AI? How much does it take to specify it to the level of specification that we need it to replace doctors? Who is taking the risks on this, right? Who is paying for these things? I think that would
Yeah.
be more of the limiting factor for it to like take our job, because at the end of the day, it will probably always be. And then also again the adaptability, right? Like
Hmm.
the not the adaptability, right? Like the buying, right? Like would you, right? A lot of people are used to seeing humans. A lot of people don't
Yeah.
trust AI. So,
Yeah.
right, like who is going to agree to see an AI doctor when there's a human doctor type deal? I think those are more the limiting factors. The human factors of implementing this system is more the limiting factor than the
Like a,
system ability itself. That's
yeah.
just my thought, but we'll see. I mean, like,
Yeah.
dude, in 20 years, man, I was telling your sister that our kid will come home with a Android, with a Autobot, and be like, "This is
Yeah.
what I'm getting married to," and that's just gonna be the reality
Yeah.
of the day. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how things pan out. All right, so then let's go ahead and close the segment here with the interview here with some reflection and guidance. So in terms of you, doctor, looking back at your journey from Nigeria to military, psychiatry, what are you most proud of, and what are things that keep you motivated today?
Yeah, I mean that's a deep question, man. I'm not gonna be out here and give some revelation that is like, oh wow, what am I most proud of? I mean, hey, it's just life, man. It's just you're faced with an opportunity, or you're faced with life, and you do the best that you do. I think the most thing that I'm proud of is every time I do something, I do my best to be logical about it, right? Like I do my best to base my decision based on the information that I have, right?
Mhm.
And less based on fears and like superstition, I would say. I don't know if that's what I'm most proud of, but I think that's what's most unique about me. Um,
Yeah.
I'm proud of my accomplishment. I'm proud of taking the little that I have and turning it to what this is. If this is what's considered success, right? I'm proud that I'm able to help people every day. I'm proud that every day I wake up, I go to a job that I love, right? Like there's no day. Work doesn't feel like work. Like I'm actually excited. I feel like I'm contributing
Mhm.
to society. I feel like I'm contributing to my fellow man. So yeah, what gets me going is it's just life, man. Life is so good. Life is sweet, right? Like it helps. It helps. Like every day I wake up and I'm like, I mean, like I think back of Nigeria where like you never know what you're gonna eat that day. You never know
Wow.
if there's gonna be food on the table. You never know if if someone is gonna beat you. You never know if you're safe, right? Like just like the basic human condition, right? Like nothing was guaranteed. I mean, today nothing is guaranteed, but that's just theoretical, right? Like I wake
Yeah.
up and I just you're just confident that you'll be okay, like you'll be fine, right? Like type deal. So I mean, no, life is good, man. I don't know. I don't have any like crazy revelation, but it's just good.
Yeah.
Thank
So
God.
yeah, 100%. So, and then I like to ask this to all my interviewees, in terms of some words of wisdom, right? And you could span across the entire board. But this would be for anybody out there trying to kind of come into the medical field but feels unsure. So the first one is the word of wisdom, and then something that you would advise someone who is considering to come into the medical field, but feels unsure.
Yeah, the biggest thing would be just, it's so cliche, but be sure of yourself, right? Like, or trust in yourself, right? I think for you to trust in yourself, you have to know yourself, and that's kind of like the whole thing. My whole philosophy behind psychiatry, right? Like, again, our brain is a complex thing. It's a complex mechanism, and has layers built on layers built on layers based on multiple variables. For you to master yourself, for you to master anything, you first have to master yourself. And for you to master yourself, you have to understand yourself. And so understanding yourself, understanding what makes you tick, understand what motivates you, understand how you process information, understand what you believe in, why you believe in those things, understand what makes you afraid, why you're afraid of that thing, right? I think, and then also again, why do you want to be in medicine, right? Like what is it that is driving you to want to achieve this goal? Are you doing it? I mean, if you're doing it just for the money, that's not an insignificant reason, and that's not a reason not to do it. But just understanding that that's the reason why you're doing it, right? Because then, if you're doing it for the money, if there's a different scheme that might be easier for you to get money, easier for you, right? Then maybe medicine is not. Maybe go through that stream, right? Like so. I think the biggest thing for everybody, like my biggest advice is the more you can know of yourself, the more you can understand yourself. And it's not easy, right? Like it's easy to say, but there's some parts of ourselves that is difficult to look at, right? Like it's like sometimes you look at the mirror and there's some parts that you just don't want to see, right? Or there's even some people that don't even want to look at the mirror in the first place. Or right, or take criticism and all those things, right? So that would be my biggest advice for anyone, right? Whether it's to make it or whether you've already made it, is self-understanding. That goes a long way, man. And it's never like a one and done process, because yourself is always growing. And so the more you're comfortable with yourself, the more you can become a weapon. If that's I'm in the military. That's the more you can hone yourself to get to whatever goal it is that you want to get to, right? The more you understand yourself, the more you understand what resources you can muster. You can understand people around you, the things around you, how you can affect change, right? So that I would think that's the first part. And then medicine is just a thing, man. It's just a thing. And like you said, AI might take our jobs. So we just have to be flexible. And I mean, I feel like a couple years from now, medicine would not be what medicine is today. A couple years from now, I mean, like it could be like all those sci-fi films where medicine is just a computer. You put in a blood, it gives you one med, and you're cured. Everything is gone away. And so, you just have to stay flexible with change and ready to move on.
Yeah. Well, I really like that self-understanding or trust in yourself. Yeah, I really like that. I don't think any of my interviewers have said that yet. So that's pretty cool.
There we go. I knew I was the of the show.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Amayo.
Wait, one question for you, Dima, for your audience. Why do you do this? Why do you do these interviews? I mean, right now, for people that don't know, we had to change Zoom twice or three times because we can't afford the Zoom. And so why do you do this? What drives you?
So a couple of things drive me. My YouTube channel is something that I feel like can do for a very long time, in terms of I'm passionate about it, right? What I do for work, I'm also very, very passionate about. And like you said, I love what I do. And I don't feel like when I go to work, I'm actually working. I feel like I'm going to work and I do something that I love and I appreciate and I'm contributing to society. The YouTube is something that is on the side and I love educating people about things, right? So that's the first thing, right? I'm an electrical and computer engineer and I feel like it's something that is kind of marketed as something to be extremely hard, but I feel that people can understand it if we promote that it's easy to understand, right? Because it really isn't that hard. And if you take the time to understand the fundamentals, I truly believe that everybody can understand electrical and computer engineering, such as myself.
Yeah.
The second reason why I do this is because the world is based on data and history. And I think that these interviews will allow us to kind of understand or see where we're at, in the past. So, for example, when me and you are, 50 years old, 60 years old, we can look at this interview and see how much we've accomplished or where we're at versus where we were, right? So it's a data collecting device, basically, right? We're collecting data right now. And that's also one of the reasons why I do it. And then the third reason I do it is a lot of platforms, right? Major stream platforms, podcasts, you can think of your favorite podcast or whatever. They tend to bring in more popular people, right? That are already up there and well known with a big following. And those popular people talk about their lives. But us common folk or the common folk is not really can relate too much to that, right? So I like to interview individuals, young individuals, if I can, in the start of the career or in the middle of the career, just so that more young people can relate more to, right? It doesn't make sense for a young person to turn on and be listening to Mark Cuban and how he made his billions, right? Because he's not actively living what we're living, right? He's not our age group. He's not a young entrepreneur or a young doctor or a young engineer. He's made his billions, right? And he's kind of telling you what he did. And necessarily, like you said, what he did might not necessarily work for us, right? So I'm trying to interview people from different backgrounds, different walks of life, so that I can reach somebody in that same walk of life and maybe motivate them to do what they want to do, kind of thing. So those are the three main reasons why I do it.
Yeah. That's also a noble. I would say electrical engineering and computer engineering seems to be the only field that might be safe from the AI domination, right?
Yeah, there've been some threats, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right? Being an electrical engineer, electrical and computer engineer is like the only job that might be safe, because no matter the thing that makes us human different, the thing that separates us from AI, and I tell this to my patient a lot, and this is the thing, sadly, that is affected when someone has depression, is that intuition, that drive to just do stuff, right? Like you were sitting down one day, you were like, I'm gonna start a YouTube channel, right? So of course, maybe there were some influences or some ideas, like maybe other people are doing it or said it or whatever. But no one programmed you, no one told you, you just stood up and you did this. Look around you over the world. People just had these ideas to do all this stuff, build towers, build all these things. And that's something that AI would never be able to do, right? At the end of the day, AI does what someone told it to do, or does what it's programmed to do. Maybe down the line, there will be a meta AI that the idea is to come up with ideas that other AIs would do. By the end of the day, even that would only do what it was told to do. Mm-hmm. Humans, that's what makes us human. It just comes up from somewhere. We just have this drive, whether it's a drive to go eat, whether it's a drive to go, play basketball, or a drive to do this, that, take this road, talk to this person. That's what makes us do it.
Thank you, Doctor, for again attending and giving us your wise words of wisdoms. If you like the video, please click the like button. Please share the video to your colleagues and your friends. And if you like what the YouTube channel is providing, please consider subscribing. It really helps the algorithm. Thank you.
And sending money or Zoom.